Okay, so we learned on Friday or Thursday that we have these different kinds of functions. We have even and odd, and then there's an option of neither too. The definition of even functions, if we're looking at a graph, is that it's the same when we reflect it across the y-axis. So this is our example. This is the same. If I flip it around, it's going to be the same image. So that makes it an even function. The other option is an odd function. The odd function means that when we flip it around the y-axis and the x-axis, that's what makes it the same. I think it's confusing the thing about having to flip it across the y-axis and then across the x-axis. I think it's easier to think about just rotating it 180 degrees around the origin, right? So if I rotated 180 degrees around the origin, it's the same graph. That makes it an odd function. If neither of those things are true, it makes it a neither function. So here's an example of what the definitions are. So you can go ahead and write them down if you haven't already. But then here's 4 that we practiced on. It's on page 319 in your book. So we have even, odd, or neither are our options. This one is the exact same one that we just talked about. That one's an even one because I can flip it across the y-axis. So this one's even. Let's change that to a different color. Even. This one, when I flip it around the y-axis, the mountains and the valleys switch sides. So that's not true. So this is where then you have to flip it across the x-axis, or just think about rotating it. And if I rotated 180 or 180 degrees around the origin, it would go back to the same spot. So this one is an odd function. This one down here, we have to rotate the whole thing or flip the whole thing. If I flip it, it's definitely not the same because this is going to be over here like this. This one's going to be over here, and this one's going to be over here. So that's definitely not an even function. So then we can look for odd. Odd means I have to rotate it 180 degrees. Now, when I do that for this part here, that would rotate it. So that way it's going to end up going down here because we have to rotate it around the origin. Plus, if you look really carefully, this is at like almost at like 6, and this hump is at like 4, -4. So they're not going to match. So this would be a neither. And then this one over here, if we look at even across the y-axis, it's not the same thing. If I rotate it 180 degrees around the origin, then it is the same thing. So this is an odd. Then the other thing that we worked on was imagining what they would look like if you continued them. So this was on page 324, and they said, draw this one so that way the second half of the graph is even. So remember, even means it flips across the y-axis. So to draw that, we just redraw all the hills and the valleys to look the same. That's good enough. Odd means I need to rotate it. So everything that's a hill is now going to be a valley, and everything that's a valley is now going to be a hill. So this is no longer a hill, it's going to be the valley on this side. This is no longer a valley, it's going to be a hill on this side. And since it's starting up here, I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees, it's going to end down here. So then this would be like this. All right, and then neither just do anything besides the 2 things that we did. Do a straight line, do a up line, do a squiggly line, write your name in cursive, whatever you want to do, just don't do the other 2 things we did. So that's how you can identify them from a graph.